For decades, trade between the United States and Japan was smooth and predictable. Goods flowed freely across the Pacific, and both economies benefited from a stable partnership built on trust and mutual interests. But in early 2025, the Trump administration's America First policy upended everything. The White House announced sweeping changes, determined to put American workers and industries first, no matter the cost to global relationships. Tariffs, taxes on imported goods, became the main weapon to protect American jobs. Suddenly, every shipment entering the U.S. faced new scrutiny and higher costs, creating confusion for businesses on both sides of the ocean. These tariffs didn't just target rivals like China. For the first time, close allies, Canada, the EU, and, most shockingly, Japan, were in the crosshairs. Allies who once felt secure now found themselves scrambling to respond. The global economy was thrown into turmoil, with supply chains disrupted and uncertainty everywhere. Factories slowed production, shipping schedules were thrown off, and companies struggled to adapt to the new rules. For Japan, the biggest threat was a potential 25% tax on its cars, a pillar of its export economy. Japanese automakers, who had invested billions in U.S. plants, now faced an uncertain future. Steel, aluminum, and even high-tech semiconductors were also hit with steep tariffs. Industries that had long relied on open access to the U.S. market suddenly faced new barriers and shrinking profits. The message from Washington was clear. Every country, friend or foe, would now have to renegotiate its economic relationship with the U.S. No one was exempt from the new order. Multilateral trade agreements faded as the U.S. pushed for one-on-one deals. Decades of carefully built alliances and global cooperation were suddenly at risk. For Japan, this was uncharted territory. Business leaders and government officials alike were forced to rethink their strategies and prepare for a more unpredictable world. Its economy had long relied on a stable, U.S.-led global trading system. The rules that had governed international commerce for generations were now being rewritten. Now, that foundation was shaking. The sense of security that once defined Japan's trade relationship with America was gone, replaced by anxiety and doubt. Japan faced a future where old assumptions no longer applied. Every decision, every shipment, and every negotiation would have to be reconsidered in light of America's new rules. The era of predictable trade was over. A new chapter had begun. One defined by uncertainty, shifting alliances, and the need for constant adaptation. For over 70 years, Japan's alliance with the U.S. was the cornerstone of its security and prosperity. The sudden tariffs felt like a betrayal, shattering Japan's confidence in its special status. Japanese leaders realized that being a loyal ally no longer guaranteed economic protection. The security alliance could not shield Japan from economic pressure. This forced a profound shift in thinking. Japan could no longer afford to depend so heavily on one partner. The comfortable certainty of the past was gone. Japan now had to consider a future where it stood more independently. The tariffs were a wake-up call, signaling a changing world order. Japan's challenge: maintain its U.S. alliance while forging a more autonomous economic path. The shock became a catalyst for Japan's journey toward greater strategic autonomy. The tariffs hit Japan's export engines hard, striking at the very heart of its economic miracle and threatening the industries that had powered its post-war rise. Especially vulnerable were cars, steel, and semiconductors, the pillars of Japan's global trade dominance and the pride of its manufacturing sector. Automakers like Toyota and Honda faced the nightmare of a 25% tariff, threatening their entire U.S. business model. Suddenly, the cost advantage that made Japanese cars so popular in America was wiped out almost overnight. Toyota slashed its profit forecast by 16%, blaming tariffs and currency swings. The shockwaves rippled through boardrooms and assembly lines alike. Uncertainty gripped the industry, making future planning nearly impossible. Executives and workers alike wondered if the golden era of Japanese exports was coming to an end. Steel and aluminum producers were also hammered as their products became pricier in the U.S. market, eroding their competitiveness and putting thousands of jobs at risk. Then came a 100% tariff on certain semiconductors, targeting Japanese tech giants. The message was clear: no sector was safe from the trade war. Stock prices tumbled, and companies scrambled to adapt. Investors watched nervously as decades of growth seemed to hang in the balance. However, the US offered tariff exemptions for firms willing to manufacture in America, opening a narrow path for survival. This split Japan Inc. Some companies suffered, while others with US operations like Sony saw less impact. The divide between winners and losers grew sharper. The tariffs weren't just about trade, they were about forcing Japanese firms to invest in America, shifting jobs and technology across the Pacific. The result, a divided corporate landscape and a scramble to adjust strategies. Companies restructured, merged, or pivoted to survive. Japan's export-driven model was under siege. Survival now meant adaptation, innovation, and a willingness to rethink everything that had once seemed certain. Japan's government moved quickly to shield its economy. In May 2025, Prime Minister Kishida announced a $6.3 billion aid package for businesses and households hit hardest by tariffs. Small and medium-sized firms, vital to Japan's economy, received targeted support to weather the storm. The government also subsidized household energy costs to ease public anger over rising prices. Behind the scenes, Japanese diplomats negotiated intensely with Washington. In July, a breakthrough: the U.S. agreed to lower auto tariffs in exchange for Japan pledging $550 billion in investments and loans to key American industries. The deal offered relief but came with vague terms and new uncertainties. Japan's strategy: protect at home, negotiate abroad, even at a steep price. The stakes had never been higher. Japanese companies realized they had to act fast to protect their U.S. market share. The solution: move production to America and avoid tariffs altogether. This triggered a surge in Japanese investment in U.S. factories. In 2025, Japanese direct investment in the U.S. soared, making up nearly half of Japan's outbound investment. Toyota ramped up U.S. output by nearly 29% in July, even as domestic production fell. Onshoring wasn't new, but tariffs accelerated the trend. Nearly half of Japanese manufacturers plan to expand U.S. operations. The strong U.S. economy made it an attractive destination. For America, this meant more jobs, but also labor shortages. For Japan, it meant a fundamental shift, from exporting from home to producing locally in key markets. Political necessity was rewriting the economic relationship. The new rule: build where you sell. As the U.S. turned inward, focusing on its own domestic issues and adopting an America-first policy, Japan stepped up as a champion of global trade. Seizing the opportunity to fill the void left by the U.S., Japan salvaged the Trans-Pacific Partnership, a major trade agreement that was on the brink of collapse, rallying the remaining members to form the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, or CPTPP. It also signed a major free trade deal with the European Union, one of the largest economic blocs in the world, creating a vast open trade zone that spanned continents and connected millions of consumers. Japan played a key role in launching the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or RCEP, which included ASEAN countries and China. These strategic moves positioned Japan at the center of new global trade networks, enhancing its influence and reach. The strategy was clear: diversify export markets and reduce reliance on the volatile U.S. market, which had become increasingly unpredictable. Japan's diplomatic influence grew as it built multilateral partnerships, strengthening its global standing. This opened new opportunities for Japanese companies to expand and innovate, and enhance Japan's global stature as a leading economic power. While the U.S. focused on bilateral deals, Japan wove a complex web of multilateral ties, creating a resilient and interconnected trade network. The goal was clear: resilience and independence in an uncertain global economy. Japan was no longer just following America's lead, it was charting its own course. It was shaping the future of global trade. The world was watching, and Japan was ready to lead. Japan's quest for autonomy went beyond trade deals. It diversified its diplomatic relationships, seeking new partners and alliances. Strengthening ties with democracies like Australia and India, Japan helped form the Quad to promote a free and open Indo-Pacific. This coalition balanced China's growing influence and created a network of support beyond the U.S. Japan also cautiously engaged with the expanded BRICS bloc, recognizing its economic clout. Selective engagement allowed Japan to hedge its bets, cooperating on energy and development while managing competition. This pragmatic approach ensured Japan wasn't left out of key global conversations. The era of a US-centric worldview was over. Japan was building a more complex, resilient global strategy. The whirlwind of tariffs and negotiations has reshaped Japan's economic landscape. The US-Japan trade relationship is being rewritten, but uncertainty remains. The $550 billion investment pledge is massive, but many doubt it will be fully realized. Japanese companies now face a risky choice: export from home or invest heavily in US production. Labor shortages in America complicate rapid expansion. At home, Japan's government must balance economic support with rising national debt. The hidden cost resources spent navigating an unpredictable global environment. Japan's economy is fragmenting. Some companies thrive with US operations, others struggle. The old model of Japan Inc. rising together is fading. Now, corporate agility and political risk management are crucial. The new reality: adapt or fall behind. Japan's future depends on flexibility and strategic foresight. The stakes have never been higher. The tariff shock of 2025 forced Japan to become more assertive and independent. America first pushed its closest ally to diversify and lead. Japan emerged as a champion of free trade and proactive diplomacy. The first lesson: over-reliance on any single partner is a vulnerability. The second: agility and initiative are essential in a turbulent world. Japan's response, saving the TPP, forging new deals and building new alliances, mitigated the damage and boosted its global standing. The US-Japan alliance will endure, but as a partnership of equals. Japan's transformation is a blueprint for other nations facing global uncertainty. By turning crisis into opportunity, Japan is securing its future and showing the world how to adapt. The era of passive reliance is over. The age of strategic autonomy has begun.